Phoenix Down Radio is on the air.
Welcome, everybody, to Phoenix Down Radio, episode number 130. I am your host, Klauss Nightbringer, and joining me today, we have Taliz Marvelous, and we have Seyrr. What's going on, guys? And what the fuck was that, Taliz?
Deal with it. That's what it was.
I got tacos.
I have beer.
I have fried cheese coming.
It doesn't look. This doesn't look like beer, but it's a very tasty peach cream ale from the local brewery. So
nice. Also, I wonder if you could do like a fried cheese taco.
Absolutely,
you can. It's awesome.
You can do anything with tacos. Come on.
But can you do anything with fried cheese? Have we found like the universal building block, much like Zodium? Will we have fried cheese tacos as the basis of our next relic weapon?
No.
Damn.
Nice thought, but no. Thank you everybody who's joining us here live at twitch.tv/PhoenixDownRadio. And if you're listening on the podcast, come join us sometime. We do this live every other Saturday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Generally, we got a little bit of a late start tonight, but if you wouldn't know if you were listening on the podcast. So also you'll get to see us interact live. We have cameras, and it's kind of interesting. So still getting used to that whole dynamic with these two doing things and stuff. So I do want to start off the show on a little bit more of a somber note. For those, like I said, if you're joining us live or listening to this right away when this comes out, you guys are aware that on Friday night, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away after fighting with cancer, and she was 87 years old.
Yeah, she was a titan of the law, a really great force for gender equality. We will not see her like for a while.
No, she was something of a rock star. I mean, people were calling her the notorious RBG.
I was one of those people.
She was pretty awesome, and may her memory be a blessing.
Indeed.
So just wanted to make sure to mention that.
I wish she could have retired sooner. Like, she kept in the job until the end for all sorts of politics reasons, but I feel like that was so much to ask for. And after her long career, I wish she could have had a little more time for herself.
Yeah. But like I said, this isn't a political podcast, but still wanted to make sure to mention something like that because it does impact us all.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we are a very queer and queer supporting podcast, so like she's kind of a hero for us.
All right. So what have you guys been up to since the last episode?
In-game or out?
Whatever.
So in-game, I have a tank now. I was a little bit slow, but now I have a dwarven tank, and it is adorable and amazing, and I went around and blasted things with the cannon for like an hour.
Isn't that fun?
It is!
And when you just go...
Oh man, blast a vegetable garden with it, because like certain things, I think NPCs will explode with various colored things if they get hit with the beam. And gardens, the vegetable gardens are made up with like 8 or 9 of those points, so it becomes a little fireworks spectacular. It's great. Interesting.
I'll have to try that. I've been shooting random things, but just not into random people.
Yeah. NPCs are the only one that seems to have an effect on, but the garden plot is made up of like 8 of those little targetable points, so yeah, the whole thing goes off. It's really cool to watch.
Okay. What else have you been up to?
Mostly a lot of library programs. We've just started a virtual homework club, which I am apparently now the lead tech person on, and it's actually going really well. It's like, I love my fellow librarians, but a lot of them do not pick up tech things as quickly, so I got to be the lead person for a bunch of that. We have a lot of students that we now see pretty much every day. They're developing like good friendships and relationships with the homework coaches, and it's really nice and sweet to see. It's like a tiny little dose of normalcy in the middle of all this weirdness. Oh, speaking of which, the wind has been blowing in the right way so the last several days the skies have been clear. It's nice. We haven't had those weird apocalyptic orange skies.
We've been seeing some of that in the morning, but I think it's from just everything blowing towards us now.
Yeah, and I have no idea how that is up your way, Tal. Is Washington still getting the brunt of that?
It's pretty bad still. The big thing that we've been dealing with is that it's raining. So the rain is kind of knocking some of the smoke down or making it heavier, but it's also not really helping because now when the wind does come, it's just not powerful enough to push it away because the air is just so dense. So then when the rain clears up, it's still smoky. So it's kind of a weird catch of like, well, it's getting better, but it's not getting better in the right way or fast enough for it to actually do anything.
Gotcha. So what else have you been up to though, Taliz?
So for the first time in like, I think all year, I own the same cars during this show as I did during the last show.
And you're living in the same place, so you're not currently at the same location podcasting.
I was going to say, I'm still living in the same zip code, city, country, but I'm not there right now.
Did it again.
I started the new job doing pizza, and of course, I've discovered that I ended up knowing everybody from the past, and we had all just like drifted apart. So now there's all of us old folks that have been with the company for 15 years, left and came back. So we all know each other. So we kind of have this weird little alliance of old guys. One guy, his name is Gandhi. He's a pirate LARPer from the area. He's now one of my best buds, which is cool. I apparently interviewed him and offered him a job at a restaurant that I ran. And I told him that if he had any other job offers, that he should take the other one, no matter what it was.
Okay.
And now he's my shift leader.
Nice.
So that was awkward. He and I also got bored during closing and discussed making curry into a pizza.
Ooh.
So I couldn't figure out what kind of curry I wanted to buy, so I bought 7 different kinds. And I showed up to work with them, and we tried to make curry pizza. Pro tip, it's crap. But we
I
tried.
feel like there might be a way to make curry pizza work.
So did we. 7 sauces later, no. But we tried. And honestly, trying, failing, and losing by a mile and doing it ourselves is way better
What if
than winning by an inch and having someone else do it for us.
What if instead of using the curry as the sauce, you just use it as a drizzle?
We tried that.
You did. Okay. Because
Yeah,
I can see the
made-
curry sauce being a little overpowering on an entire pizza, but if you're just to put it as like an accent on top.
So overpowering is the opposite of what happened.
Oh, it was underwhelming.
It was underwhelming. Would have been an upgrade.
That's a pity.
It was
Odd.
trash. It just texture was bad, flavor was bad. We tried vegan cheese. We tried both kinds of chicken. Anyway, we did a lot of stuff. We made a mess. It cost the company a couple $100, but it was gross. But we had fun. So I got to do some food experimentation, which was rad.
That's
I'm
always
actually
good.
at Pyrocats's house right now because we're playing with Harumaki. Because we didn't get a chance to do this later. This research should have happened forever ago. So expect a Stormblood inspired prep station someday that may or may not involve fried cheese.
Deep fried food, always
Nice.
good.
Oh,
Oh,
I just remembered. I have one other thing that I can show you really quickly of what's been going on lately.
Absolutely. Please do.
And
is it of the fluffy
sure,
variety?
and I can actually. It is.
God.
'Cause I think I can do that. Yes. So we'll go ahead and I'll just zoom in on it a bit. But we are fostering kittens. And it should be coming through. Oh, I said it. I told Discord to start piping this image through, but perhaps it is not doing.
Are you putting it in Discord?
Oh,
or are
I
you putting
see.
it in Twitch chat?
It's not going to allow you to change your video source, I think, since I'm the leader.
Got it.
I think.
Okay.
I'm not
I will
sure.
go ahead and actually just post a bunch of pictures on the Discord, on
That's
our
probably
Phoenix
best.
Down Radio Discord. But we have been fostering 2 adorable kittens, one of whom's back legs don't work, which makes her extra adorable. Her name is Pretzel. I don't think this has anything to do with the state of her back legs, but I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, if she's sitting all kind of discombobulated, maybe.
Then maybe, yeah.
They've actually been getting a little better the past few days, so it might have just been like an injury or some type of temporary thing, but she still mostly pulls herself with her front legs. It is so cute and sweet. And we're going to be bringing them back, I want to say, in about 3 days from now, and then we're going to have a little break, and then we're going to be fostering more kittens. So I should have a steady stream of kitten pictures for you all to enjoy.
You
That
better.
sounds like the
You
best
better.
thing that's going to happen in 2020 in your life is just I now have a
Kittens.
steady stream of cute cat pictures.
Yes. Like, I grew up with cats. Like, 19 years, we had, like, 3 cats. but I never had kittens.
Kittens
They're
are
so
the best.
weird. Like in an adorable way.
They are amazing. I grew up on a farm, and we had barn cats. So the cats would live in the barn, and they just be around. But they weren't wild cats; they were domestic. But they would probably every couple of years we'd end up having one of the mamas would have a new litter, and we would have 3 or 4 kittens every couple of years. So just playing with the kittens is amazing. That doesn't
seem like the type of thing that'll come up and cuddle with you.
You make them come up, but yeah. We would always go out there and we would play with the kittens when they got old enough, when their eyes were open and they were moving around. And yeah, then it was just so much fun playing with kittens as a kid.
Yeah, I grew up in a city. We had a Volvo and a Honda Goldwing.
With no kittens.
My house doesn't do animals unless they ended up on plates. We just didn't do pets.
Did you ever have a Tamagotchi? That's like a pet for people in cities.
It didn't even make it home from the store before I misplaced it and lost it.
That doesn't surprise me.
I just don't.
Wow.
I just don't do responsibility at all.
Like the metaphor there is dead on in a way that's a little impressive and frightening.
Yeah, I just don't do pets. I like other people's pets. They're fine. I'll show up at their houses and apartments and feed them. At one point, I had 5 cats that I was in charge of. Don't own my own. Don't need to. Everybody else has them.
I'm that way with babies. Like, children's story time is great, but do not give me a kid of my own. That's not going to end well.
Well, my last couple weeks have been kind of interesting. Give me a second here. Come on, wake up. Why does my desk not want to wake up?
Did you make your desk sentient? Is it a Zodiac weapon now?
Yes, my desk is a Zodiac weapon.
Oh, it's the augmented desk of Ultimate Gaming.
Why do we keep imbuing these things with sentience? It seems so inadvisable.
And yet, you collect minions.
We haven't imbued those with sentience. Klauss is shrinking.
No, my desk is rising.
Nah, you were going downwards. That means you're shrinking. Frames of reference don't change.
Actually, the frame of reference did change in the back. If you see, everything looks a little different.
Oh my god, your house is sinking.
Shut up. No,
hey, bud.
After the last podcast, I had friends come over, Nicknar and Daltrea. We built my desk.
Nice.
And then I tore everything apart after I got everything set up on, put up for the 5th anniversary podcast. We built the desk. We reorganized. I took a week, no streaming, just took a break off of it. I was also on call, so I was part of it. But got that set up, and now I have a fully redone streaming station behind me.
So
go ahead.
That converts between the sitting and standing desk?
Yes, it does. I hit another button.
Nice. And
merch
pan
plug.
Down to Klauss's crotch.
No, just doing a merch plug.
Okay.
But yeah, I just hit a button, and the desk adjusts tight from standing to sitting. It's really nice.
So it's powered, so you don't have to wind it or anything.
Exactly, and it's got memory, so I just hit a button, and it goes to the height that I set it to.
Okay, Pyrocats, I think you might need one of these desks.
It was a lot of work, but I think it was worth it for me. It's if you follow me out on Twitch or Twitter, you will have seen it there. I did post pictures of it out there. I probably should put some in the Discord as well. But if you see behind me, I actually put up more lights, so now pretty decorations.
Yeah, you've got a really colorful setup going there. It's awesome.
I'm enjoying it. I mean, it's nice because they're all controlled by my Skynet here. But yeah, it's been a good time, and
oh, I just noticed. Yeah, they're changing colors there.
They do.
That one just went very deep. Ooh.
Yep, they all change colors, different colors through the rainbow. The color setup is based off of our logo, actually. So
I'm just going to be entranced by that for the next 10 minutes. Discuss whatever.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into game and community news.
Huzzah!
So Final Fantasy XIV news. The last 2 Tales from the Shadows stories are out. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't read either one of these yet. I will be though.
I didn't either.
I absolutely will be. I love these stories, but I just want to make sure that everybody else has a chance to go out and take a look at them.
So the last two, the first one, Ere Our Curtain Falls, takes a look back at the past, at some of the stuff that we've explored in the 5.3 patch, with our new understanding of Elidibus, filling out some more of those details, adding in some details about the 14th member of the Convocation, the Defector, that have become very meme-worthy in and of themselves. It seems like they were as much of an epic tier shit poster, choosing the goofiest dialogue option possible as we are themselves the Warrior of Light now are.
Yes.
So I guess some things never change.
And then story 8 is on Promise Tomorrow.
And that's dealing with the bad timeline, the one where the 8th Umbral Calamity went off. Exploring a little more of what happened in there, including what happened after the Crystal Tower departed for the Ethereal Rift and the First.
Interesting.
Yeah, they've got some... Given that the Crystal Tower is no longer in that location, it seems unlikely that they would be able to bridge the gap. So that may be a timeline that's just forever out of reach for us now, but there's some stuff to suggest that it's going to be going in an interesting direction. I'm sure people will start writing lots of fanfic exploring it.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. Got it.
Who knows? Maybe that'll be what they do in 9.0.
Oh, God. That's going to happen someday.
Possibly.
Maybe.
Well, they've got 6.0 planned out, but I don't know about anything beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, part of that is going to depend on just how much Yoshi P has on his plate.
Well, speaking of which, he does have more on his plate.
See, I do segues good, thank you.
Final Fantasy 16 has been announced.
That Project Athia thing they've been floating, turns out that was the new mainline FF.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought that was something different.
I'm pretty sure it was. Like, that was the one that Yoshi P was working on?
No, Project Athia had a female protagonist.
I was pretty sure.
I thought it was a separate game.
Oh, I don't know anymore. Oh, no, okay, that is something.
Yeah, there's more games to play. I think we'll be all right.
Yeah.
Unless they're like fucking with our expectations of what's going on and something's more Anyways.
Anyway, I have posted a link to the trailer in the Twitch chat. It will also be in the show notes for those of you listening on the podcast. And it's a return to the full fantasy realm for Final Fantasy.
I did notice there's still a little bit of steampunk and brass and whatnot, but we don't have the in a futuristic world where you have been imbued by a magical science thing and your children turn to an ice sculpture while you escape on a train.
Yeah, we're not that.
We don't have that shit anymore. It's like, no, there's a sword, there's plate mail, there's chain mail, there's an archer dude, there's a dragoon that's on the floor dead. Like, we're okay. We get it now.
There's a thing that's like a medieval castle-y courtyard.
Yep.
Exactly. So much better.
Yeah, this is... Yoshida is the producer. But Hiroshi Takai will be the director, so we do not have to have producer-director Yoshi P for Final Fantasy XVI.
Hiroshi Takai, the main thing I recognize that name from is The Last Remnant.
He also did work on 11, I believe.
So yeah, he did do some work on 14 as well, Romancing Saga, did visual effects, battle graphics, and a bunch of other things throughout. Oh man, he's been going.
Yep,
all the way back to 1988 in some cases.
Yep, he's been around.
Some of the stuff that I saw him do, especially Last Remnant was the one that I was going to bring up, was Last Remnant is a very good example of we had a bunch of stuff in the maybe pile. We put it all together into game to see what would happen, what worked and what didn't. And there's a lot of stuff that didn't work in that game. And there's a lot of stuff that was a really cool concept that needed to be honed a little bit better. Overall, the game was kind of crap, but it was fun as hell, and I played through it twice. It was, I'm willing, and Square Enix, and I've said it 100 times if I've said it once, Square Enix has made a couple of missteps, Type 0, 8, a few other things, but I'm more than willing to support them trying something new and weird and different, because that's what's gotten them to survive, for starters, and just make some of the really cool stuff that we have ended up with.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend about this, the whole thing of the two major series in Japan being Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, and my friend's a Dragon Quest fanatic, but for me it's they feel too much the same. Like Final Fantasy feels a lot more willing to experiment with everything, like battle systems, interface, storytelling.
It's a multiverse type of situation where, you know, while we do have occasional actual sequels to games, most of the actual games themselves are reimaginings of the system for the most part.
It's like people say 7. Look how cool 7 was. I'm like, you are aware that that Magicite and Materia are very, very similar in how they function and work. And everybody's like, oh, I guess that's true. And then 9 comes out, you learn abilities from weapons. And I'm like, okay, you do see that we're still looking at Magicite. Like, it's just being evolved. Like, we changed it a little bit.
Yeah, 10 was a big change when they went to the sphere grid.
Yeah, the sphere grid was different, but having defined roles again, like we did with 9, like we did with 4, it's like they're willing to take the thing and change it all completely. They think outside the box while still somehow managing to touch the box.
Yeah,
It's
like there's
pretty
some
good.
amount of, we're taking the same idea, like this basic idea of like the Magicite, and we're gonna riff on it in a lot of ways that end up feeling different and unique. Even if like functionally they end up working the same, they give a different feel to them, and your brain approaches them in a different way.
There's certain things when you play like Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, like you eventually know what everything means. So I go, oh, Zeo means it's the lightning magic, it's the electric magic. Well, I now understand what all of the, you know, pre and post pieces of that word mean for making it an AoE versus making it a powerful one. Like I can understand that. When I leave Persona and go to Shin Megami Tensei, the spells are still the same. When I leave Phantasy Star and play Phantasy Star Online 2, 25 years later, going from Sega Master System to current PC generation, the spells are still the same. The items are still the same. Everything still works the same. Having those things that we can lean back onto and understand it's the definition of genre, right?
Yep.
There's a reason why the bad cowboy wears the black hat and the good cowboy wears the white hat. Like, it's just stuff works. Leave that alone, but change what you can so that you do get a unique experience every time.
Yep. That's definitely a good way to put it. Though I will say with 16, when they showed some of the in-game combats and things like that, it did seem very similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy XV, the whole action RPG. You know, going away
that
from.
Said, it was one trailer, and like they're notorious for having a thing that suggest. You compare like the very first Final Fantasy 15 trailers to what we eventually got.
Oh God, I
13
canceled my
versus?
15 pre-order after watching a trailer. And you know, sometimes it changes dramatically for good or for worse, but we have to be willing to understand that, you know, it could be 10 years before we see this game.
Yep. Though, well, I doubt it, but we won't know more until 2021. That's when the next bit of news is going to come. And this is going to be a PlayStation 5 console exclusive for about a year. So it's gonna when it launches, it's gonna launch exclusively for PS5, PC maybe 6 months later, and then if they want to, they can put it on the other consoles after about a year. But
I'm curious what their sales looked like for 15 putting it on Xbox.
Well, when they went to Xbox and PC, I do believe it actually did go up quite a bit, and I believe it was part of Game Pass for Xbox.
Oh, yeah, that would definitely change how your sales worked for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm excited for 16. Just getting news about a brand new Final Fantasy. And I will continue to scour, you know, for additional news moving forward on this, because, you know, it's always nice to have a new game to talk about.
The few bits of story and plot elements that they teased are intriguing. There's some stuff that's like reminiscent of some elements of 14, and there's wondering about how much of that is Yoshi P's hand in this.
Yep.
Reference to Mother Crystals, some of the various like icons, though it seems like it's a bit of a different take on them.
Maybe next episode we can dig deeper into the trailer and kind of discuss what we think is maybe going on with it, because there's some really interesting things going on.
Frame by frame.
Yes. It's going to take all episode.
And then some.
Just kidding.
That'd be terrible.
But speaking of PlayStation 5, did you guys get a chance to do a pre-order?
Nope.
Not yet.
I will say that was an absolute clusterfuck on Sony's part.
That's what I heard.
They were going to open up pre-orders on Thursday. Retailers are saying nope, and they opened up pre-orders shortly after the whole event happened, and yeah, they've sold out in like no time.
Yeah.
I did see something talking about like the manufacturing process. They ended up having some issues with where the supply is going to be lower just because it's something related to semiconductor stuff, and how many good chips you get per production thing ended up being a lower yield than they expected.
Yeah, though Sony
So,
came back and
we'll see
said
how
that they
that
don't think it's going to be as bad as people are projecting. They said there are going to be more pre-orders coming out soon, so if you did not get in on the first round, do keep looking. $500 for
I'm also
the...
okay just not having one at launch.
Yeah, it's $500 for the one with the disc drive and $400 for the all-digital version. So Taliz, you know, you will save $100 if you want to go that route, because I know you don't like to buy physical things.
But the doctrine of first sale.
I don't know what that is, and I don't care. I don't want a physical disc. It doesn't make any sense.
The one thing that I like about... Go ahead, Seyrr.
It's the thing that says that when you buy the thing, you actually own the disc and you can decide what you do with it, like giving it to a friend or things like that. As opposed to, you have bought a license to this game, and at some point we may revoke the license and you no longer have access to the game.
Like on an MMO.
Okay.
I mean, we could physically sell the discs that we have for Final Fantasy XIV, but once the server is shut down, you can't play it anymore.
Yep. Like, it's do you actually own the game, or are you just purchasing effectively a rental for it?
As somebody that rents everything he owns, I don't see a difference or a change.
There's intellectual property concerns about it, about who gets control over it, and whether
we can
you
talk
actually
about that on another podcast.
Yeah, that's one of those librarian things I will go on about for hours if you let me. So we should probably keep moving.
Yep, I was
Yes,
just gonna
please.
say I did get lucky, and I was able to procure a PS5 pre-order on GameStop. Spending more than I necessarily wanted to, but it's gonna be the chunky version with an extra controller, another year of PS Plus, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Destruction All-Stars. So that's gonna be kind of neat. I'm actually looking forward to getting it.
When Final Fantasy XIV moves over to PS5, then I might look into getting a console.
There's a good chance that it will.
I know. And when it does, that's when I'm probably going to look into getting the console.
That's fair. All right. I see that you put in a whole bunch of information on a new card that is coming out for the trading card game, Taliz.
I did. So, Opus 12 is coming out very, very soon. I'm not sure how or why we're still releasing Opuses, since we can't get together and play. But, you know, who cares? It's already printed, so here we go. They've already slowed down production for the FF TCG just because game stores, like, we can't sit 3 feet apart and play cards. Like, it's not really an option right now. But Opus 12 was mostly done, so they went ahead and they decided to start releasing it just because storage versus sales, etc. So they're releasing the first multicolor card. So if anybody that's a Magic player who's seen a gold bordered card at some point, you know exactly what these are. It's things that require 2 colors to cast or play them. There's a few that have been announced. One is Locke from Final Fantasy VI. He wasn't quite as interesting. The one that I was super interested in is the new Thancred. He's a 7-cost forward. He has 8,000 power. He's category 14, as he should be. He's got the job sign of the 7th Dawn. He has 2 different automatic abilities that go off when you cast him, and he plays very similar to how Thancred in Shadowbringers actually works. When he first enters the field, you choose a forward in your break zone, aka your discard pile. If the cost is equal to or less than the amount of water forwards or water backups you control, play it onto the field. So, he shows up, he finds a dead person. If he has enough allies, he can bring that person back and have them fight with him. His second ability says when he attacks, choose an active forward the opponent controls. If the cost is equal to or less than the number of lightning forwards or lightning backups you control, break it. So if his friends are more supportive, he can bring out more friends. If his friends are going to be on the front lines with him, he can start breaking stuff just by showing up. Both very, very Thancred-esque abilities. So I was kind of happy to see that. But here's where he gets weird. You can actually cast him with water or lightning colors, as opposed to previous cards which were strictly stuck to one of the two or one of the 6 that exist. So there's a Yuna that exists in Opus 12 as well, and her special ability is she can change her element once per turn. She's normally a water forward. Every Yuna card up to this point has been water. So she's sitting there as a water. Thancred enters play, gets the ability for having a water backup. Then Yuna can switch to being a lightning. Then you enter your attack step and then swing in with Thancred. And now all of a sudden Yuna is pulling double duty. His first ability says that you have to have X number of water effects or X number of water backups or forwards in order to bring stuff out of the break zone. It doesn't say that what you're getting out of the break zone has to be water.
So you can pull a lightning out.
You bring out a lightning before you attack, or you bring out that wind thing that breaks itself every single time. Or you bring out that thing that you can't actually pay for that's in some color that you're not running, but now you don't have to pay to play it at all. So now you have access to skills and abilities that you wouldn't necessarily have.
Because he can fetch all these different allies for you.
Because you go, I need this fire backup. I need this wind backup. I need this ice backup. So you can start bringing in things that you wouldn't normally have. Say you want to bring out Genesis, who's an ice forward. Well, you could do that. Say you want to bring out Emmett Selk, who is also an ice forward. You can do that. So you bring in Thancred, he brings Emmett Selk with him, Yuna becomes a lightning element and plays with the dress sphere, and then Thancred shows up and breaks things with Alice, Alphino, and Louisoix backing him up, because they're all lightning element cards, and all of them have synergy with Scions of the Seventh Dawn type forwards.
Oh, so wow, so Thancred really works well when he's being played with the other Scions.
Scions works well. Scions went from non-existent to top-tier deck in one expansion a couple of years ago.
And it's kind of interesting, like with Thancred, you've got this whole like versatility. He can pull out a lot of different things, and you don't really know what to expect when he takes the field, because he could be going for any number of different things.
And when he hits the field, he brings out another thing with him, with that water effect. Well, once he's out, he doesn't get to do that anymore. That's a one-time thing. So when he kind of shows up, he might bring somebody with him. They might be powerful, they might be less powerful, depending on where you are in the game. But every time he attacks, that lightning effect goes off. So if I do it this time and I only have one lightning backup, it's probably not going to do anything. But next turn, I'm going to have 3. And the turn after that, I'm going to have 4. And the turn after that, I'm going to have 7. And now all of a sudden, I enter the attack step. I turn with Thancred. I break your biggest thing on your board. Now what? Block with nothing? You just have to break all the little stuff. Thancred comes in and breaks the big stuff, and then you push through. You only have to hit somebody 7 times to win. So very, very cool card. Very thematic to Thancred. Works very well with all the Scions that we have, all of the water and lightning Scions that we have. He can bring out some of the fire stuff, like I mentioned, but most of the fire Scions are better suited to supporting other fire type cards. But he's very cool, and he's one of the first multicolor cards. So if you play the TCG, we finally have multicolor cards, and I will see you guys at the table when we can play again next.
Yeah, it's always really fun when they can make mechanics that kind of support the flavor of the character.
Yeah. There's some stuff that you see and you go, that doesn't make any sense. Because if you haven't played the game, it doesn't make any sense. Lon from World of Final Fantasy supports monsters, one of his versions of the card. Well, duh. Like an early version of Lon in the early part of the game, he cares so much about all the mirages that you're capturing. But by late game, he's just like, I just want to get through our plot element redacted piece thing that we're doing. And he doesn't really care about the mirages anymore. So the higher cost, more powerful Lons are more about being offensive on his own. But the lower cost, more common, the common version of his card, those are more supportive of all of the monsters and stuff around.
So when you've got like this, the multiple versions, it becomes a chance to kind of explore the character's journey.
Or you summon the low cost one. He does what you need him to do. He dies in combat somehow. He's gone. Now you can play the more expensive one. So you do get to kind of bring him through his whole pathway. There's also Ida. You can play Ida. She's fine. She's Wind. She has some spells. She has some abilities. She has the cool face masky thing. And then there's a 5-cost forward in Fire named Lise. And Lise has the special condition. You cannot have a Ida on the field when you have Lise. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it makes sense to us, but it doesn't make sense to somebody that hasn't played 14 or hasn't played Shadow or Stormblood specifically. So there's lots of little things that they hint at. There's a Mist Dragon. If Rydia is on the field, Mist Dragon also gains this effect, which doesn't make any sense unless you played the first half an hour of Final Fantasy IV.
Right. Like you might get, okay, there's some kind of relation between them, but you don't necessarily follow why this is happening.
And you don't need to. Like, how many Yu-Gi-Oh players do you know that have never seen the anime? How many Pokemon video game players never touched the TCG or never watched the show? How many people watch the show that have never touched the card game? Like, there's lots of little different pieces in specifically Pokemon. It's just 6 different franchises that all have the same name. Final Fantasy, you don't have to play World of Final Fantasy to play a WoF deck. You don't have to play 14 to play a Scion's deck. It makes a hell of a lot more sense and it's more enjoyable, but it's still a card game. It's still stats.
Yep.
It's like a fun little bonus if you know it.
It's a very fun bonus when you can do things like, I want to play a Dragoon themed deck. And the 3 of us can sit here and go, okay, well, what does Nidhogg do? Okay, well, what does Kain do? And we can come up with these little connections, and Nidhogg and Kain work very well together, but you wouldn't think of them together unless you had played 14 and 4.
So it gives you an idea of where you might look for cards that work well together just based on the thematic elements.
Why do Bartz and Lunith and the Onion Knight work really well together? I'm not sure. Hey, there's this weird Uniforward that can keep changing out for other Uniforwards. Gee, I wonder why they all synergize super well. If you know how job-based games work, also those things tend to work very, very well with tactics characters for the same reason.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. It's a fun thematic thing. It was really interesting. Unfortunately, the other card that I was thinking about linking an image to, I don't have it with me, is the multicolored lock, which looks exactly like the art of the, spoiler alert, one of the bosses in Heroes Gauntlet. It's the exact same art. So I was like, oh, that's really fun too. So they know what they're doing.
Nice.
Very cool. So if you guys like playing TCGs and you haven't looked at the Final Fantasy game, I would suggest going and checking out your friendly local game store and see if they have any. And if they don't, ask them to order it.
They don't, harass them. I mean, ask them politely.
Yes. All right. Now, we'd been taking a break from this for a little while because, well, we had Final Fantasy XIV news and podcast news to talk about, but we are going to go back into our exploration of Final Fantasy soundtracks. And I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people who are very excited for us to go over this particular game. Who here remembers Final Fantasy VI?
Oh my god, played through it so many times.
My playmat for FF TCG is the Ukiyo-e Heroes woodblock print art of the Final Fantasy VI.
Oh, you were
Image
making that
yes.
earlier. That was really gorgeous.
Yeah, I asked him if I could do it, and he said, sure. And I said, hey, how much do I owe you for the rights to use your image to make a thing that's for me? He goes, oh, don't worry about it. And I was like, no, please let me give you money for using the art that you are generating. And he's like, no, it's okay. And I said, okay, well, I pull it off the website. I'm trying to edit the images together. And I'm like, these look like shit. He goes, they sure do. Here's a Dropbox link for the Photoshop file.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, so I sent it off. It got printed. I deleted the email. I deleted the file. They're like, I cannot keep a copy of that locally at all. I don't feel comfortable with that. Like, you can't just give me a Photoshop file, dude. But he let me have it. and I got to show him the actual map for Final Fantasy VI. 6 is historically one of my favorite games of all time, let alone Final Fantasy games.
And I would say that it is probably number one on a lot of people's lists. It's really well done. For being a game that came out in 1995? 96?
94, 95, depends on when it was released in what country, but yeah.
But it stands up so well, and we get so many little things that come from it. Things like
it really leaned into the ensemble cast way more than anyone has before or since, except maybe Type 0. Like 4 had a similar number of party members, but most of them, like a lot of them, were fleeting guests who joined for a bit. Same with 2, where it's like you had a large cast, but not necessarily like the ensemble cast. With 6. Like, it is difficult to decide who is actually the main character. There's a lot of reasonable debate about that.
Officially, giant air quotes, you have 2 main characters, one in the World of Balance and one of the World of Ruin. But if you've played through the World of Ruin, you're like, well, I didn't have her in my party the entire time, and the story still went off just fine. So, it doesn't matter. Like, you can have whoever you want.
Yeah, there's not like any kind of fixed party once you get to that point. And you can complete the World of Ruin with just 3 characters.
Would you like to have a treasure hunter, a child artist, a dog man wild boy, and the abominable snow person? Go for it!
Yeah.
Also, the abominable snow person's dancing floofball.
Yes.
Who's also just kind of the mascot character.
Okay. Now, if we were to do all of this in one go, we would be here for probably 4 hours.
And that's just listening. That's not us responding.
The OST is like 3 discs, I want to say.
It is 3 discs.
It's insane.
So we are going to split this up over 3 episodes. Today we are going to go over disc 1. And it starts like this.
That one that takes me back.
So good. Love it. They hold it so long. This is Omen, or the opening theme from Final Fantasy VI.
The first game, the last game was just, I get to go on an adventure with a bunch of my friends and hang out with a chocobo. And now you're like, what is this horror shit? Why is there lightning striking the logo? Oh God, we haven't even started playing yet.
You got your ominous building or pipe organ chord. This is no longer the lighthearted adventures. He said something big is about to go down.
This is not suddenly appearing in front of a castle for no apparent reason. Is this like the one where we showed up, killed a bunch of people, stole a crystal, killed everybody in a tower, then killed a mom, and then just ran off? Oh God! And that was only 2 games ago.
Now we're getting to this dramatic bit.
Well, you're not far off on how we start this game off. We do show up in a random town with some heavy-duty armament, and
we're there looking for this power sealed within crystal. I mean, ice crystal in this case, but
it's always crazy to replay the opening scene of a game that you know in your heart and in your head, and because you start catching stuff that alludes to things way later in the game that you had no idea what it was the first time you played it.
Yep. The first time you play through this, it's why are they doing that?
You're like, oh, the Esper, it's in ice. And then you play 13 and you go, oh, sweet Jesus. Oh God. They know what they're doing very well.
This song is just so good. It has so many... Go ahead.
Tiny spoilers. There are songs on this soundtrack that are very, very long.
Yes. I mean, this one's 4 minutes. But it has so many elements of the game within it. Like, it's been changing throughout this time. It's not the same song for 4 minutes.
And it's opening you up and it's seeing what you're doing. This particular piece of the song, when my first time that I went to Distant Worlds, this was actually their closing song. And they had the credits rolling of, Arnie Roth, Seattle Symphony Orchestra, but they still had the animation of the 3 Magitech armors walking through the snow.
Yeah, between the first bit and this bit, there's a sequence with just the wind howling on the promontory overlooking the 2 Imperial soldiers and their captive witch discussing what they're going to be doing. Followed by, we've got a credit roll as it's in the glorious Mode 7 graphics as they march towards it. They recreated this in Final Fantasy XIV when they had that Magitech armor mount available.
Yes. The first, when it was first come out in 2.0, one of my roommates was like, "Oh yeah, we've taken so many screenshots in Coerthus right now. Like we would get our mounts and they just went to Coerthus and just did screenshots."
Slow walk it, wait for snow weather.
Figured the song is almost over. We'll just play it through.
This is one of the best tracks in all of Final Fantasy.
Again, going to that kind of ensemble casting, you're getting lots of little leitmotifs of various characters throughout.
Yes.
It's the type of thing you'd hear at as the overture of an opera, where you have like all these little elements of the songs that you're going to be hearing throughout the piece.
But if that's how you start the game, that's pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah. You start out and you're like, "Oh, what do I have?" And then at the end of the game, you're sitting there with 70 hours of gameplay and 16 characters, and you're an emotional wreck, and you've watched people that you developed relationships with live, die, and move on, and you're like, playing a video game still, right?
Like, yeah, it really is more of an overture than an opening theme. Like, just in terms of, like, it really is setting the stage for this big dramatic story that we're about to tell.
All right, so our next song takes us into the mines of Narsh. This is basically the first dungeon.
I think you also hear this music when you're in the town of Narsh proper, don't you? Yeah.
Well, I think it also plays in the mines themselves, do they not?
Yeah, like the town and the mines both.
Yeah, this is the first town you're also in.
For Narsh, the two are kind of inseparable from each other. It is very much a mining town.
Yeah.
It's described in the opening as long after the death of magic. This is a place where, like, kind of the place of the new industrial revolution, rediscovery things like gunpowder, various types of metalworking. This is a kind of a place of technology. It has a
Sorry, you're cutting out a little bit there, Seyrr.
It has a pensive feel to it. Like, it's ostensibly a thing that's like moving towards the future, but there's a little bit of like uncertainty. You can hear it in the running underneath here.
You kind of got the whole.
And this is the early piece where it's all dialogue, so you're really starting to understand where you are, because literally dropping people in front of a castle with no purpose was obviously not the best way. So they wanted to give us a little bit of opening to see where we were. So there's a lot of text.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lot going on.
We get introduced to the idea of this empire that's doing stuff. The returners are mentioned for the first time.
There's a flashing into the Edge of Sepia or Black and White. My memory serves correctly. Where they're like, here's a thing that is also happening or has happened in the past, and they're showing the generals rising up with the army and things being destroyed, and it's all, I want to say it's sepia toned over all of the text.
I think so.
No.
I'm not sure.
It's just a nice little tune.
But it's not a happy one. It's not like a sad or dour one, but it is an uncertain one.
Yeah. But it still has a really interesting feel to it.
I love it. It's just not a happy one.
No,
but, like,
it's uncertain.
I'm sorry that isn't happy.
Uncertain is accurate, but it doesn't generate fear as a response. It is just unknown.
Well, it's very fitting because we're just being dropped into this situation and we don't know what's going on.
And paired up with our ostensible main character, who also doesn't know even her own name for a little bit. And even after that comes back, still can't remember most of her past.
Speaking of that, this plays when said character has a revelation. It also is the theme of Mobliz in the World of Ruin, way later in the game. But when Terra, the main character of the first half of the game, basically gets some idea as to what is going on, or basically comes out of her Magitech control, she realizes what she did and what she needs to kind of do to fix this. She
instantly feels remorseful for the actions that she's taken, even though she wasn't under control. It's a good way to sort of show our character as we have a very moral character that is going to be for the current piece of the story, the protagonist.
One of Terra's central themes in her character arc is the idea of wanting to understand what love is, what emotions are. She's this we can just really talk about the spoiler aspects, can't we? The game is like a decade old. I think
it's 25 years old. Spoiler alert. Or deal with it, or whatever.
Terra is a half human, half Esper. As she rediscovers this part of herself, the Espers being this kind of magical, be very separate from the world. She's right. What does this mean for her? Is she someone that can relate to other people? She can send someone that can feel love, not in the sense of like, oh, I want a romance, but being able to connect to people, or if she's kind of separate from others. There's a little bit of that uncertainty, that kind of wavering in this tune as well.
Yep, that was Terra's awakening. But then we meet a new character.
My favorite, Treasure Hunter.
All the treasure hunter are going to rip your lungs out.
He's not a thief, he's a treasure hunter.
Work does not get nearly enough love.
This is the theme of Lock Cole. Now this is an upbeat.
At the end of his name, so we know he's not messing around.
D4 treasure hunter, he's definitely a bit of an adventurer. He's the type of person who has connections to underground resistance groups, goes around all over the place.
He's a treasure hunter with a heart of gold.
Yep. And if you look at what gear he can use almost anything in the game. He is definitely your fluid character that can do lots of things.
Yep.
But is ultimately a support role for everybody else that you have in your party.
Yeah. I mean, there are times when he becomes your main damage dealer.
Yep.
But when you gather everybody back up and you've got Edgar and you've got Sabin, you'll use him to steal things from the boss, or to just to steal Gil or whatever,
I think we recall him making a passable mage as well for various things.
Yeah. Later on, he's a good support mage. He's not good at healing. He's not super great at offensive magic. He can be speed run, stat crunching, all kinds of stuff. The thing that he is best at naturally, if you just kind of casually play through the game, is giving him all the status condition stuff.
Have him haste your party. Have him a crippled enemy.
Which again fits with Thief/Treasure Hunter. He primarily uses daggers and light swords. He uses medium-ish armor. He can get the cool accessories so that he can run faster, or have higher luck, or hit something with two hands. But he's just not... If you put him in as a physical attacker, he's not going to touch Cayenne at all. If you put him in as a mage, he's not going to touch Saris at all. He is a very good balanced character for you to try shit on and then figure out who's better at it and have them do it from that point forward.
He also worked pretty well with some of the throwing weapons, having him in the back row for that.
Yep, when you don't have
He and
Shadow.
Ninja work together doing that. It's great.
Yep. And then when you get into those battles,
I hear the sound of a wrench being thrown at me. Does anybody else hear the sound of a wrench being thrown at them?
Oh man, I can hear the little dings. And we've talked about this before with other games, how like the battle theme kind of, it seems to be time to work to fit in well with the various sounds of the actual interface.
Blink, 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 blink. if you watch an Edgar Wright film, specifically Baby Driver is a really good one. Everything, every brake squeal, every tire close, every door, every gunshot, every table slam, everything is timed to music. All of it. And battle music in FF does that as well, but it does it with random sound effects.
Right.
It's so crazy how they pulled it off.
It's active time battle. You can't guarantee that they're going to be doing moves at certain intervals alike, but you can build music that is very adaptable to being able to slip those things in pretty much anywhere.
It's a song you're going to hear a lot in the game, but it's really well done battle theme.
It's a song that you hear the first 16 notes of a lot. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Eventually, you just crush everything, and then you're running, and you just hear the dee 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 dee, and then it immediately cuts to fanfare.
You mean? I mean, you can't have a battle theme without a fanfare.
It's true. Screw you, 12. Fanfare is good. Damn it.
I mean, you get the fanfare after boss battles.
But we don't get this one in 13 either, so.
Yeah.
Get a very different victory theme in 13.
That's funny I can discuss about when we get to 13, but that's for a much later show.
I mean, it's a very different set of people making the music for 13. I mean, this was still all
the soundtrack
Uematsu.
for 13, despite all of the.
Oh, don't get me wrong. There's a lot.
bits.
There's a lot of good stuff in 13, but it's not. It's not key Uematsu stuff.
That's a classic victory fanfare. Pretty much similar to all the other times. I don't think there's anything super specially different about it.
Other than the fact that it's just an amazing song. Now we get to meet two new characters. This is the theme for Edgar and Sabin.
No, we don't know that's the theme for Edgar and Sabin when we first hear it.
This I believe plays in Edgar's castle.
Figaro Castle.
Figaro Castle, yeah.
Like that's one of the things. A lot of these themes, it may seem at first that they're associated with a place, but it becomes like, no, this is about a person.
And that's 6 in general. It's about the people.
Yep, it's not about
It's always
places.
about the people. It is about Kefka. It is about Kayan's wife. It is about Sabin's mentor. It is about their father who made them flip a coin. It is about every single person. It's really cool.
Well, okay, they chose to flip a coin, but
Fair, but still.
If I'm reading this,
it's kind of got that regal imperial, not imperial, but like the regal. It's like this is a castle. This is very much like a you come to the castle part of this.
Big brass. Big brass is almost always just associated with royalty in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and Edgar likes to play that to the hilt. He seems to, like, he at least projects the appearance of enjoying being the king and being in charge and doing all that.
Because he knows that his role is to do that, because if he doesn't, it's going to be bad. But behind closed doors, oh dude, he is so done with all of this shit.
well, he's also kind of using his position to try and hit on all the ladies, so.
This womanizer, a little bit problematic.
Machinists, this is where your drill and your flamethrower and your bioblaster came from, by the way. You're welcome.
Your air anchor.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, this is where those job abilities came from that you got in 4.0 and 5.0.
Yeah, which is really nice. Machinists didn't have quite as clear of an identity, but linking it to this classic thing of Edgar and all of his various stuff.
Well, the fact that the guy turned his castle into a giant moving underground drilling machine.
Mole castle.
And then in World of Final Fantasy, you get captured. He captures you. Obviously he's playing both sides, and he's a good guy, but he's just faking it. He captures you in his castle, and you have to go like travel through Figaro Castle jail, and like you're underground. There's like dirt coming out of this like mechanical space. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's the same thing in 6 as well. He plays as being allied with the Empire, which is why Kefka even comes for a visit in the first place. But he's secretly in league with the Returners. Edgar's very much a both sides.
All right, but speaking of, Does this sound like the theme of the major endgame antagonist?
It sounds like the kind of quirky mini boss thing, and there's kind of an escalating thing going on with Kefka, where the first time, okay, he's this person complaining about having to do this castle inspection. Then he's the person who's set the fire at the castle. Then he's the person who poisoned the river. Then he's the person who just murdered all the Espers that we brought in for the peace conference. Then he's the guy who shoved the statue. And each time, it's the same theme, but there is kind of a build, both in the theme itself and in where we see it, there's like a kind of building, escalating nature to it.
Then he's the kind of guy who destroys the entire world and becomes a god.
If he can't win, no one can. And then he wins.
Yeah.
In his own weird, twisted brain.
I mean, it's not even about wanting to win, it's just about, like,
Wanting
seeing
to
human endeavors and pointless and wanting to destroy everything.
wanting to sow chaos.
So here's one of my favorite things about this particular track, is it starts out with the laugh.
No, that was me.
Was that you? Oh,
That
did
was-
you play that? You have it on the board, right? That bit.
Drilled
doesn't-
into our
okay.
mind.
It doesn't always start with the laugh, but like in most scenes, they will play that with him.
And starts after.
It's literally the first spoken line of dialogue in Final Fantasy. Obviously, it's
It's
not,
true.
spoken word like we get in 10, but it's a voice that is assigned to a character that is recorded, that is played when that character is emoting, making noise. It is the actual first line of spoken dialogue in Final Fantasy.
Nice.
And it's Kefka, who is in most votes in Japan and the US. He is the second most popular Final Fantasy villain behind Sephiroth.
All right, see if this is a little easier to hear. It's still really quiet. Yeah.
He is creepy as shit, and I love him to pieces.
I kind of like that even though his role keeps ramping up, keeps escalating, like he keeps pushing the ante on how horrible things he's doing, the music itself doesn't change, but it still seems to fit. Like, it works as, okay, here's this quirky side boss character, and it continues to work for him up to God, who has just declared that he will destroy everything and create a monument to non-existence.
And we'll get to that
It's
whole
so-
bit in a bit, or in
We'll
a
get to that
couple
in 3
episodes.
weeks.
Yeah. Until then, we're gonna go to Mount Colts.
Ah,
This plays in mountainous locations. Also plays in Esper Caves and Mount Zozo, and in Duncan's cabin in the world of Ruin. So
Now, the Duncan's cabin connection, I think, is because Duncan had been training in the mountains, so we could reasonably believe that when we find out it's also like in a somewhat mountainous location.
it's the scene where if I remember right, it's the scene where we get Sabin.
yes,
Yeah.
Mount Colts is where Sabin has been training with the bears.
And there was a wrestler in the 90s named Chris Sabin, and he got his stage name from this character.
For a moment, I thought it was about to be the other way around, but that's awesome.
Well, it's pretty rad.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
Wrestlers are just nerds.
Well,
like,
look at
most
the
of
New
them are
Day.
just nerds.
I did see the ones who came in Red Mage cosplay. That was pretty
Yeah,
great.
That was pretty rad.
Yeah, that's a New Day.
Yep.
And Final Fantasy XIV was actually a sponsor of WrestleMania, I believe, or one of the pay-per-views. SummerSlam, maybe it was.
That sounds right. I think it was SummerSlam.
But it was the
I
same
haven't
one where they
followed
came out in
wrestling in 20 years, I
cosplay
have no
with
idea.
chocobos and Moogles and all that shit. It was crazy.
And so we've got our, like, this one's got kind of a feeling of adventurousness again. Like, it's capturing a little bit of that FF5 feel of like, okay, we are like climbing the mountains and going on an adventure, and who knows what's around the bend.
Last time I climbed a mountain in Final Fantasy V, it went reasonably well. The time I climbed a mountain in Final Fantasy IV, it did not go well. And the time in Final Fantasy III, we lost Joseph. Like, can we stop climbing mountains? They don't work
That
out
would've been
super
2,
well
would it
most
not
of
have
the
been?
time.
You would have lost Joseph in 2, though.
Yeah, Joseph was 2.
Oh yeah, Joseph was 2. Who did we lose in 3?
Dash?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of dead people in
Like-
Final Fantasy NES days.
You can put stuff at the top of mountains. Like, you have this thing, you have stuff you get through, you have a goal at the top. It's like a story in physical form. and that physical form is made of rocks and very tall.
Play
Oh.
Yeast, dude. Like, that's where you're at. Or Tower of Druaga.
All right. Now, these guys had been mentioned early on in the game, but now we actually get an introduction to the returners.
The Rebel Alliance, effectively,
Yeah?
of this game.
It does have a little bit of a military feel to it, which they're trying to position themselves as like this opposition to the Empire. Even though they don't, like, they seem to act more as, like, they don't seem to act and move as a military does, but it does have this kind of like organized feel to it.
There's there's certain stuff that works when you're organizing that many people for a counter fight organization. Uniforms and militaries and ranks work, dude. Like, sometimes you just have to stick with what works in order to survive.
You need some sort of
It does feel
organization.
like- It doesn't really feel like we see much of the returners outside of the specific like party members and one or two other people.
I mean, there are a number of people that are members of the returners. I mean, half of Narsh is members of the returners. And there are factions that are spread across the world of balance, but
It ends up feeling a little more like a sleeper cell type thing than anything else.
they are cells, yeah, kind of. But and I think it relies on getting messages back and forth through different means.
They're a comm network, and that's part of why Locke fits in with them so well, is that he can move around.
And Edgar to a certain extent, because he can use his diplomatic status, I suppose.
Yep.
Yeah.
Status, power, immunity. I don't like
Yeah.
immunity, but
That kind of thing.
yeah.
All right. So let's move on. We're introduced to another new character.
You have a lot of opportunities to be introduced to this character. The first one is actually, I think, even before you hear the Returners theme.
Yep.
This is Shadow's theme. Shadow is an enigma of a
great.
character, initially. It seems like he's actually working with the Empire. But
Yeah, it's really hard to put down like what he's doing.
he's kind of doing his own thing to start with, but he ends up becoming an ally.
He does. Slightly unwilling, but he does become an ally.
If you meet him in South Figaro, I believe Locke is the one who makes a comment about how he'd slit his own mama's throat for a nickel. It seems like he may be working with the Empire, but it's not because he especially adheres to their ideals or anything. He'll just do whatever for whoever pays him without thought of morality.
And he has a puppy.
That is the best part of Shadow is the puppy. And
But,
how
the theme doesn't quite line up with that. Okay, he's just this heartless person. Like, there's a little bit of like a lonely feel to it. Like, there's something going on in the music that doesn't quite square with what everyone thinks of Shadow.
The whistle sound in the song, because I grew up watching old spaghetti westerns and black and white films, like, I'm getting like this weird western gunslinger
Yeah.
wanderer vibe out of it too.
Yeah, I didn't watch as much of the spaghetti western films, but I played a fuck ton of Wild Arms, which has a lot of that same feel. And there's that element there too. Like, it feels like he's from a western.
And Pyrocat's asking in chat if that's a jaw harp. Yes, I believe that actually is a synthesized, or supposed to be to synthesize the sound of a jaw harp.
It's Japan. It's the 90s. Remember when the Green Ranger played a flute through a solid helmet that sounded like a synthesizer playing a trumpet?
Don't think about it too hard.
Like, you just gotta let some shit go, like, every once in a while.
All right, and our next theme is whenever the party engages with the Empire or walks around an Imperial base. This is basically kind of their version of their Imperial March, but it is called Troops March On.
This is, I want to say it's like Sabin and Shadow meet Cayenne, if I remember right.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
outside of Doma.
Yeah.
Gee,
Sabin
does that name sound familiar to you guys out there on the podcast?
Yeah, so Sabin has been separated from the rest of the party as they made their way down the river. He ends up trying to make his way back, potentially joins up with Shadow. They move to Imperial Camp where we're introduced to Leo, see Leo interacting with Kefka. Kefka does the whole thing where he poisons an entire castle. And then Cyan comes charging in for vengeance, and the three of them join up together.
Cyan, Cayenne, whatever. I mean, like I said, it looks like the color cyan, so I think that's what most people in the U.S. say.
Yeah. It's because they only had 7 letters, so they couldn't fit Cayenne. Is it 6? Yeah, they couldn't fit the full word of Cayenne, so they did that instead. And then it's like, well, the katakana says this, and his name in kanji is this, and he's actually a samurai, but in America we call him a knight. And it's like, you know what? Sword guy. It's Mr. Thou. It's Mr. Thou. That's his name now.
He is Mr.
I think
Thou.
I think we could have handled the idea of samurai, except samurai is also 7 letters.
Samurai and, well, I mean, we had, touching back on Japanese media, Power Rangers, the ninjas were aliens. They're like, oh, we can't do that. That's too much Japanese culture. So like, oh, samurai, can't do that. Let's call him a knight instead.
The audience probably would have been okay with it, but the people making it thought that American audiences wouldn't have responded.
I guess. I don't know.
Speaking of Cyan or Cayenne, those of you who play 14 will also recognize this theme.
And Cayenne himself gets the name drop in 14 as well. There's a couple different invocations of that connection.
Cayenne in Japanese, well, spelled out in Romanji, is Kaien. That name is dropped in the Stormblood story.
Yep, the former king of Doma.
Yes. Kien's father.
Yep. Hien, in one of the cutscenes, depending on which dialogue choice you have, he will mention what his childhood name was, and that actually is the name of Cayenne's son in Final Fantasy VI.
That's really cool.
Yeah, right?
I love these little tiny... 14 is just a playground for Final Fantasy fans.
It absolutely is, and that's why we love it so much. I mean, it allows us to explore all these other Final Fantasies as well.
Now,
it's an MMO, but also
for a thing where our introduction to Cayenne is as this really hot-blooded, raging samurai who's just had his entire family cut down. The music doesn't quite line up with that. It's a little more serene. There's power behind it, but
as we get to know Cayenne, we realize that this is actually very fitting for him.
Right. Yes. But the fact that we get to see, again, this game is about the characters. You get to see his interactions with everybody. And his interactions with Gao was the first person you really get to see him interact with, other than Sabin, who's an equal, an adult male. He meets, like, Realm. His dialogue with Realm is crazy, because you can definitely tell that he's a dad. And
he doesn't really know how to handle this foul-mouthed little girl.
Yeah, he definitely, you can tell, oh, he's a dad. And when he interacts with Edgar, you can go, oh, he's also a leader. Like, you can see little pieces of his personality in how he interacts with other people and what we know of those people. It's that weird quadrant thing of the things that only you know, the things that other people know and you don't, the things that everybody knows, the things that you know and other people don't. Like, it's that kind of blend of, we know what these people are, we don't know what Cayenne is, but when we see them interact, we start seeing more of what Cayenne can do based on what we know of the people that we have a better grasp of. Yeah. If that makes any kind of sense at all.
Yeah. It's like kind of assembling this complete picture of the person. Mm-hmm. The music also evokes like his kind of like searching for this like serenity and acceptance, which we see this hot-blooded rage. We see in the world of Ruin where he's like where he's writing letters to this woman pretending to be her dead boyfriend because he wants to spare her the sorrow that he felt. And we see him eventually confronting his own demons, like searching this kind of inner peace through and making his way through this tragedy.
God, I love this character so much.
Moving on, though, we like I said, we could talk about character arcs in great detail. You know, we may revisit some of these games just to do that.
Yeah.
But moving on, since we have music to talk about, this track is called "The Unforgiven." This plays during tight situations, such as Sabin's battle with Vargas, the siege of Doma, or the poisoning of the river, and the crumbling house in Sen.
It's something that's not just like a strong action, but it does have that, like, it fits with that feeling of like anger, of rage, like the title being The Unforgiven. This is something where Sabin is confronting Vargas over the murder of their master, Vargas's father. Cyan is charging into the Imperial camp after seeing the entirety of Doma Castle poisoned. These are people who have been overtaken by rage, and you kind of get that quickening feel of bloodlust out of this. You're not thinking, you're not raging through something. This is just like pure directed emotion.
But also when this plays, you would think it would be, oh, it's a tight situation where you might have the opportunity to fail here. And you do. Like, you can get absolutely wrecked in a lot of these situations if you do get in battle. But for the most part, these are situations that you are going to absolutely pummel the crap out of someone. But they're using combat as a stage. And this is one of the things that 6 did that hadn't really been done in gaming before, where instead of battle being basically a second game to the actual game you were playing, instead we would put in dialogue, we would see the story, we would see Gao bounce around. The Mr. Thou scene is done in the battle when Terra uses fire in front of Edgar for the first time and he loses his fucking mind. Like, that all happens in battle. This music is playing during a lot of those kind of intense moments where we're getting exposition, but I'm also supposed to be menu crunching right now. It's a weird, cool experience to give to a player.
Yeah. The other thing it actually made me think of, so normally you have, you may have the music and then the battle music takes over when The Unforgiven is playing, so like the crumbling house in Sen. When you're rushing through that house as trying to save the little child, when you get into battle, this music keeps going. There are some situations where the music doesn't change over; it keeps to this to keep that tense, rush, emotional feeling going on.
Yep,
without
exactly.
going full lampshade and just putting a timer in the corner. Like, no, I want to know that things suck intuitively. I don't want a timer in the corner like we got with 8 for that Ifrit Cave thing. Like, no.
7.
I want to know things are bad because I can hear it, because I can see it, because I got one shot right before the battle ended and then immediately got into battle and my battle loads and I have a dead party member. I like that. Keep the music playing through all of that. That's scary. That's intense.
All right, let's keep moving. Our next tune, very spooky.
Boopy one.
Phantom Forest. Zulio, thank you for the follow. We do appreciate you stopping by and joining us here. If you missed out, we are listening to Final Fantasy VI music. We're on disc 1.
This is another one where you've got like that kind of pensive air of mystery.
Yes. The Phantom Forest is a very... It's shrouded in a lot of mist. It's meant to keep you lost. If
you don't follow the right pathway through, you can loop around over and over.
Holy crap, guys.
What up?
We just got a $100 donation to Extra Life.
Oh my
from
gosh,
Anonymous.
thank you.
So thank you so much for that donation. That is amazing.
Yeah.
And Zulio, as a fan of saying in chat, as a fan of Final Fantasy for being a musician, I appreciate this a lot. Well, we're gonna be continuing this a lot more in the future. We did Final Fantasies 1 through 5, starting at episode 119, I believe we started the music. So if you want to jump back, and listen to some of that. We encourage that as well. But even though this is a very spooky theme, getting back to the song, sorry, kind of have to keep the podcast going.
Oh, good, man.
Not just in the Force, but any time where it's like, it's not necessarily about being spooky, but just being, again, that element of unknown.
Mm-hmm.
But in like a less active rushing forward, like with the mountain, and a bit more of the like, you're stepping carefully, you're looking around each tree to see what's up ahead. And as much as you can, because the trees are dense and growing denser.
Mm-hmm. But it's not only spooky and unknown, but it's also kind of beautiful in the same way.
Yeah. Like there's an enticing element to it.
Absolutely.
There's something that says, just go another few steps, see what's like. Yes, you need to look around the corner, but you also should see what's around that corner. What might be there? That high bit running through now, it's almost like a siren song.
Yeah, I see it. Uematsu did just such an amazing job in this.
You did.
Yeah, now that I'm listening for it, there's definitely all that sounds like a kind of siren voice calling you forward.
And remember, he did all of this on Super Nintendo. This is the third game in the Super Nintendo trilogy. So just like Final Fantasy III had amazing sounding music for the NES generation, at this point Uematsu had really gotten into his stride when it came to programming music for the Super Nintendo, or the Super Famicom in his case, I guess.
It's the Super Mario Brothers 3 and Excite Bike principle. Like I show people, like, okay, play Excite Bike for 10 minutes, now play Super Mario Brothers 3 for 10 minutes. Tell me that that's the same piece of hardware. Like, it's almost impossible to consider that that's the same piece of hardware. But we look at what came out in 2013 on a PS4 versus what's coming out right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, it's definitely better now. But you look at it side by side, you're like, it's better, I guess. But like we haven't upgraded the hardware at all. But our software, we've learned how to max it out and tap it out. But in the days of the Famicom, the Super Famicom, even the Genesis, even the 64, we had no idea what these systems were capable of when we first started designing stuff for them.
And a lot of that we've also discussed before, like they're still limited in a lot of ways. So a lot of it is like the whole getting people to hear the notes that you didn't actually play. A lot of those you have to invoke a lot more of that. We're going to play with the senses because we know that it can evoke this thing we can't do otherwise. And I feel like that's just not as necessary anymore. So you don't get like that huge gap because you don't have okay, we've now figured out how to do this such that we can play with the senses that way.
We don't have the restriction to breed creativity. We have the what's a restriction
Yeah.
mentality.
Breed creativity, though.
All right, next song. I love this song. I love how it builds up.
But you've got that little rhythm always behind it.
This is the Phantom Train.
This was a good raid. I liked doing this one. And
Yes, it was a raid in 14, but it was also an amazing dungeon in Final Fantasy VI.
I mean, that's the fact that we actually fought the goddamn train in 6 is why it became a raid in 14. That said, I'm still disappointed that there's not anything that involves suplexing the train.
I love the fact that you can buy perler bead art from like 2.5D prints or whatever, and they just dead ass have Sabin just like in the air with the shoulder drop animation. He's just and the train, the full thing of the train, is just upside down. Just does not care.
Suplex a train, bitch.
Yeah.
You know Sabin is the best character because he can suplex a train.
For those
Okay, let me get this straight. Ninja, Samurai Knight, weird child that's eating beef jerky, Musclehead suplexes a train while the train is moving.
The weird child wasn't with them yet. That came after.
Yet. I think, oh, that's right. You get him right after you leave the forest.
Correct.
Yep.
It's all very blurry.
The whole
Fly through
thing
this part of the game.
with the Phantom Train, though, how basically this is kind of like ferrying souls.
Which they don't find out until they've gotten, or one of them knows, but warns the others too late as they hear the door lock and they hear that.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, by the way, like this is effectively the river Styx and we're on a boat, so good luck, y'all.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was.
I just saw the biggest grin on Pyrocats's face when I said that.
I will say though, there is a very sweet moment once you defeat the Phantom Train with Cayenne and the souls of his family. So it's a very heartfelt moment.
It's a good scene. It's a good fight. It's a fun time.
I mean, the only reason we get on is because he sees his family get on, isn't it?
And there's that screech. Like, I like that they added the things up, because when you're on the train, it is going in the loop, but they do have, like, that sound of the train screeching to a halt. Like, a lot of those little elements there. And yes, for those who are not aware of it, so there's a number of entertaining glitches in Final Fantasy VI. One of them is that Sabin, being the martial artist, can do a suplex on a number of different enemies, where he'll leap to them, jump into the air, comes back with them upside down, slamming them into the ground. There's a number of enemies for which he cannot actually do this, because they're too big and heavy and bulky and whatnot. The train is supposed to be one of those enemies, but a flag did not get set properly on it. So you can, in fact, have him. The fight has, just like in Final Fantasy XIV, the train moving down the tracks. You, in this case, running along the tracks instead of being on a minecart.
Running in front of the train, trying to not get
Yes.
squished.
On the left side of the screen, which is opposite from how the battle system works.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's
But you can, in fact, input the thing, and then Sabin pauses, leaps to the train, leaps up in the air with the train, comes back down, slams the train. Completely accidental, misset flag, became a meme in its own right.
And there's a lot of stuff in Final Fantasy, and Square Enix is very good at this. If there's a bug that creates a situation that doesn't really negatively impact the game per se, they're like, nah, screw it, leave it in, it's funny.
yeah. It's
And
not
now
a
we have a bunch of
game-breaking
legacy
glitch.
crap that's built up over 20 years.
Oh, we have all the shibboleths.
Yes.
All the shibboleths.
All right. So you were getting to this a little earlier, but this is at the point where we get to the Veldt. Or the Wild West. This plays in the Veldt.
Yep.
And
This is
another-
actually, it's a grindy section, so you're here a lot.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
This is where you fight dinosaurs, I believe.
Yes, you can fight dinosaurs, you can fight Magitech armor, you can fight, like, if you get towards the coastlines, you can fight some of the water stuff, which doesn't make any sense, but whatever, who cares. Gao is one of the... He's not one of the original Blue Mages, but, like, he kind of leans into the Blue Mage side because he uses all of the beast magic.
Right. We've got a different character who is explicitly called out to be a blue mage, but Gao has some elements of that.
Mm-hmm. He's considered a feral child, and in order to gain his trust, you have to feed him beef jerky.
Yep. Feed him the beef jerky, it's a key item, and then he joins you, and there's a whole scene where he tries to talk to, in the English translation, he's trying to talk to everybody, but he doesn't really know how to speak properly. And he tries to talk to Cayenne, who's having difficulty dealing with a bouncy, obnoxious boy. And he says, thou must calm thyself, or something to that effect. And of course, Gao responds with, thou. And he starts actually physically bouncing around the combat screen. Mr. Thou, Mr. Thou, Mr. Thou. And that became Cayenne's name for the rest of the game.
And I think Sabin has to say, it's like, yeah, his family just died. He's not exactly in the mood, dude. And then Gao, creeps back over and apologizes, and it's very sweet.
And he's like, I'm sorry. He doesn't understand. but he understands that something he has done has hurt him, and so he goes, and he kind of does his best to apologize, which is all you're going to get out of a Pharaoh child. But
he's doing his best.
Gao's great.
And once
if you level up Gao, he's amazing. If you don't level up Gao, he is the most useless drop party member ever.
He's one of the ones that if you know what you're doing with him, especially depending on which rages you get, he will absolutely break the game. Wind God Gao, I think, is one of the the name for one of the absurd combinations of give him the right gear and have him use the right rages.
Speaking of Gao, this is actually his theme now. And it's very deep, but also very sad sounding.
It plays in a couple very specific scenes.
But it's a very different sounding song from what we've gotten thus far.
If you told me that they had gathered a group of musicians, they gave each of them a note card with a dozen words on it and left them work by themselves, and then that was the soundtrack, I wouldn't be surprised. Because all of the songs are so unique and different and in depth. But because it was one producer and it was one writer, it was just Uematsu, you end up with this overarching chord progression and set of tones that every single song has.
Now, if you told me
still set different.
If you told me this was the one that this was the one where he'd given that and that this was one for the Wild Child, I would be like, no, they got that swapped with a different one, right? And it speaks to some hidden depths about the character.
Yeah, I think it plays when we start learning a little bit more about Gao.
Especially the scene where you meet the old man who lives in the shack. If you bring Gao along, go through that entire scene there, you have this ends up playing over it.
Notes alone do not give you the full tonality of what you're asking about artistically.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue on. This is the theme called the Serpent Trench.
I wonder where it plays.
In the ancient castle, of course. And the Serpent Trench.
And Locke's house and Shop 2 and... No, it's...
Also, I believe in Japanese it translates directly to the snake path.
That sounds correct. I haven't looked at the kanji for this game in forever.
Hebe no Michi, I believe.
There's something in that, like that underlying tone. It sounds like a reference to one of the other leitmotifs, but I'm having trouble placing
I
which.
believe in the world of balance, this is actually underwater. Or is it? Or because I know in the world of ruin, it's actually a it's very different. I think it's actually out of the water.
Yes.
It's been a while since I've played it, but I know that this area in the center of this, in the world of ruin, is the tower. Is that correct?
Yeah. So in the world of balance, it is underwater, kind of like a Gulf Stream current or something like that, where with the aid of a diving helmet, you are riding this effectively underwater pathway to quickly get to a port city.
Oh yeah, well you find his special treasure and you're like, what the heck? And then it's like, here's this ancient ass 1930s diving helmet. It's like, sure, all right, that's fine. It's not the weirdest thing that's happened in this game.
Gal's treasure. Shiny, shiny, shiny.
Shiny, shiny.
Can anything be that shiny?
I just love listening to these songs. I don't think we've maybe only cut one song off so far. They've just all been so good.
And this is why we take a while to do these soundtrack episodes, is because we're just not going to get anything done.
Yeah, it also shows up in that ancient castle where, again, we've descended down into the depths and we're finding something like kind of this unexpected world. It again has that feeling of like excitement and adventure and exploration in the midst of this big like operatic tale of all these characters clashing. There's this moment of focusing on the adventure. It's almost a little side story-ish in its own way.
All right, let's continue on. Our next theme is called Kids Run Through the City. And this is basically the town theme. It's a very town theme sounding song.
Everything's okay.
But is it? Is it really?
For the moment, it is.
Hey, don't worry about it.
I just like that he called it Kids Run Through the City because these towns are actually very lively.
Yeah. There are quite a few where kids are actually playing back and forth. Some of them are pretending to be Magitech armor.
Until they're...
That was cute as hell.
Yeah. They don't know what it actually is. They just know, hey, this is a fun thing that the adults talk about.
It's like it's a not fun thing.
Yeah.
Remember how you used to have parents? Like, it's not a fun thing, kids.
But that's for later. For now,
Yeah.
For something
for the
like
moment,
this,
it's
maybe?
here.
This is under martial law.
This is when so there's a part of the game where your party splits up into 3 and you have to do each route as a player and then all of your party comes back together. And this is the route that you get with Locke, who has decided to kind of go off on his own. If I'm remembering if it's the right
Yes.
scene where he breaks into Figaro. Yeah, and
Yeah,
he's
South
sneaking
Figaro.
through.
Yeah, the Imperial Army has taken over South Figaro after it was basically after we all ran away from Figaro Castle on Chocobo back, and
The kids are still running around in the street a little bit, but the tenor of their games has changed.
I mean, with all of the Imperial soldiers standing at every entrance and exit, you know, it kind of makes things a little bit more tension, a little more tensions going on here.
This was a cool scene due to, I mean, not only just the music is good and you get to see some exposition while looking around a corner, and you get to read some dialogue from people that don't know that you're hearing it or knowing what's going on. This is also a scene where you get to use Locke's thieving abilities to steal outfits,
You mean hunt treasure?
and you change your clothes, and they use a different animation sprite for you to walk around with to get you through certain doors.
Oh,
So
that-
instead of just find a key, it's find a dude that's wearing this outfit, beat the crap out of him, steal his clothes, and then run over here.
That poor merchant.
Yeah,
Or the obligatory beat up a soldier and take his uniform.
that I was okay with.
The merchant was kind of a dick, though, too.
I mean, everybody in Figaro was kind of a dick, to be fair.
They're under Imperial occupation. Tensions are kind of running high.
True.
All
But
right.
yeah, this is one that's very much suited to Locke's brand of stuff. To that, like, kind of like a little bit of like the fast talking, like the thief, treasure hunter, whatever type aspect. The person who's gathering information, traveling around from place to place.
And he finds a really interesting bit of information here.
Imperial general turned traitor.
Yep, this is Celis' theme. Probably one of the most beautiful themes in the game.
Probably one of the most well known.
Well, it shares...
This section
Yes.
right here. This is the section that is why, because this section shows up in another song later.
Yes, which we will talk about on the next episode.
Yep.
But yeah, it's very beautiful. It's probably my second favorite character theme in the game.
It's surprisingly like it's what I want. Like for some, you hear this like as I say, this is an Imperial general. This is one of the people who is helping the Empire. She's turned away from them, but even like a Imperial general who's turned to the side of the good guys, you wouldn't expect something that's delicate. I think delicate is the word.
Delicate, broken. You don't expect an aria. Like, this sounds like it came from Final Fantasy III in a lot of ways, just because of how melodic it is.
Yeah.
But I've been,
There's a lot more to Celis than what we know.
oh my god, Celis is amazing. She's one of my favorite characters.
Absolutely, she is one of the strongest characters in the game.
I had a PC in a FFRPG game who was like, I want to be like that character from 6. And I was like, okay, we can do that. They ended up becoming a Ronso. They ended up going with a Gunblade. And we ended up homebrewing some rules where they could use Runic like she did.
Nice.
But instead of the magic being nullified, it could get stored.
Ooh.
So when they used their Gunblade, they got effectively Chaos. If you play FF or play D&D 5th edition, it was effectively Chaos wild magic.
Nice.
So if the gun went off, it was whatever the hell was in there. And I was using old Crystal Chronicles spell combination rules, so they were throwing off all kinds of weird shit. But I'd put it at like the most mundane fights or the most inopportune moments because it was funnier. But we had a lot of fun being like, let's make Celis, but also Squall, but also Kimari. It was awesome.
Now, this particular iteration of the theme, as opposed to the aria that we mentioned before, there's a scene that it can play in the World of Ruin that's considered to be a really not establishing because we feel like we're, but like a really defining moment for Celeste. And for establishing just how broken the world and people's hopes have become. Where
Her full name is supposed to be a heavenly thing, so it's supposed to be Celeste, but that's too long, so that's how it became Celis.
Right. But that one will actually play over in the World of Ruin. The Celeste becomes our focus character to start with. She's ended up on a deserted island along with her effectively adoptive grandfather, Sid. And the two are kind of just struggling to eke out an existence and survive. Celeste has woken up after a year in a coma. Sid himself has been taking care of her this whole time, but he's not doing well himself. Everyone else who had been on that island has passed away. They don't go into too much detail about that at that point, but you can attempt to help take care of Sid as he took care of you, and you can fail at this. And Celeste returns to find her grandfather lying in the bed, not moving, eyes forever open and unblinking. And all of that after having lost everything else, that's just too much for her. She heads to the north of the island to a high cliff overlooking the sea, where, in not so many words, it's implied that for people who became too much, they would pitch themselves off that cliff and end it all. And this music plays, this thing as you have this Imperial General, this really strong character, someone who's managed to rise to the top of this army, utterly broken by everything she's been through, all of the loss she suffered. And we hear it as she pitches herself over the side. It's a really affecting moment. And it got really quiet as I was describing all that.
Because you're a good storyteller, god damn it, that's why. But yes, that is one of the... By the way, if you haven't played 6, 6 is kind of dark. It also has a lot of really good things. I recommend it to everyone.
It's a great game.
But do bear in mind, this is not a game that you are just going to PvP and shoot each other and steal a car. This is a game that you are going to feel things and read things and understand culture and people and characters in a different way.
And it's going to take you at least 30 hours to get through. And
that's if you know what you're doing.
Well, if you know what you're doing, you can get through it in about 7.5 to 8.
Yeah.
But
if you are just casually playing and you don't really know how to like utilize Espers effectively or gear effectively, yeah, you're going to be in there for 35, 45 hours. Easy.
It'll be a great ride, though.
It was fun. I mean,
you're going to love every second of it.
When I streamed it a couple of years ago, I think I played it for a few hours at a time, but I think it took quite a few weeks to get through it.
It took you almost like 4 months, and you were playing, about 3 to 5 hours a night, depending on the week.
Well, generally just on Thursdays, though.
Yeah, because you were only doing it the once a week.
Yep.
But yeah.
There may be some stuff that's a little less shocking at this point, less surprising, but that's only because Final Fantasy VI established the trope for some of these.
Yes. So, I mean, you may have seen the idea of it, but this is where a lot of it came from.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments that you have to look back and say, well, where did that terminology come from? And you go, oh, God, I played this. How did I miss that? I got to explain to a kid at work where Jump the Shark came from, and they looked at me like I was completely insane.
I mean, it was a
like-
kind of a situation.
It was a
Pyrocats-
weird situation, but it was. You have to understand, 6 established a lot of the stuff we see in current Final Fantasy and in current gaming.
Pyrocats in the
Yeah.
chat's asking which is darker, 4 or 6, because 4 sounded really dark when we talked about it. I would say 6 is probably darker.
Yep.
Mainly,
6 starts out good or 6 starts out bad and goes way worse. 4 starts out questionably and dark gray and gets better.
Like 4 is kind of a tale of this redemption of this person. It starts in a bad place, but you see him like trying to make a difference in fighting against these things.
And the result of that redemption is ultimately a love story.
yep. And in
And
6,
in 6, the story is very Japanese in that, well, we're done telling the story now, and it's time for everyone to go home. And you're like, but everything is still crap. Are you serious? It's like, yep, good luck, everybody.
It's about like trying to find the strength to go on. Like, one of the big things is why do the people keep going knowing that everything that they do is going to be torn down and destroyed? And each of them trying to find their answers to that question is one of the things that occupies the second half of the game.
Yep.
all right. We have 3 more songs in this disc, so let's go on to our next one. Protect the Espers. This plays during the battle for the Frozen Esper, the escape in the Magitech research facility, and battles in the Soul Shrine.
Yeah, especially like, I remember it's also the initial one where you're rescuing Terra from the with the Moogles from the at the very beginning of the game. You have like Locke and the teams of 2 Moogles they're moving through. They had several battles where you control multiple teams and swap between them. So that one, the Esper battle. Like, it's not the same as Locke's theme, but it feels like it shares some of those elements. Which, given that the very first one Locke is the central character of, kind of makes some of that sense.
I mean, Locke's job as a treasure hunter is acquire thing. That's what we're trying to do. So, like, it makes sense that we're going to use a little bit of that chord progression so we get that tie-in. Yelta asks, what's the best way to replay 6 right now?
Ooh.
Whatever way you want. Like I said, it's everywhere. It's literally everywhere.
I would avoid some of the more modern tablet remakes just because they redid the sprites in a way similar to what they did with 5.
Depends on
I
what
stated-
kind.
But
Sorry, go ahead.
if you get your hands on it, I would go for either the actual cart or emulated, although Phoenix Down Radio does not condone intellectual property violations, but go ahead and emulate that shit.
You'll get your best play through that way, I think. But
I would go with the Game Boy Advance one. They went ahead and redid the translation. Woolsey's translation or localization is a classic. I think he gets more hate for it than he deserves. But the Game Boy Advance one, I'd say it's a good one that will line up with a lot of modern sensibilities and convey some stuff pretty well. That said, it's also worth getting your hands on either the cartridge or emulation for the original Super Nintendo.
Short version, play it however the hell you want. Long version, the oldest version you can get, the better. However, I will say for the Super Nintendo version, there's actually 2 print runs of the cartridge, and one actually has a glitch that won't let you trigger a flag in the final dungeon. So depending on which one you end up with, you might have a bricked cartridge. I am a bigger fan of the GBA option just for that reason. But if you still have your PSP, or God forbid you still have your PS3 hooked up somewhere, PSN actually has a copy of Final Fantasy VI for like $10, and then you just have it.
There's a lot of options for this one. As I said,
There's
I'm not
so
a
many.
big
Just
fan
play
of
however the hell you want. It's fine.
these removal ones just because of what they did to the sprites, but there's options.
I want to
We
say
can
if you
talk
play it on Steam, you can change out the sprites. There's always ways
You
to
probably
mod.
can now. Those were not well received.
All right. This song is probably one of the more recognizable ones, at least towards the beginning third of the game. The Decisive Battle.
Why do I feel like I want calamari?
Well, that's actually a different game, different theme. Doesn't he have his own?
No.
Is it this?
It's this.
Yeah, this is the one that for most of the battles you fight against him.
For anybody who doesn't know, Ultros is a purple octopus that shows up a bunch of times in Final Fantasy VI, and hence the calamari joke.
Yeah. And for Final Fantasy XIV players, you'll remember this from the Dragon's Neck Coliseum trial where you fight against Ultros and Typhon. I think it also shows up as a Sigmascape boss theme, like a variation.
It does.
Yes.
There's also a version of this at Cafe Eorzea, which I will someday get to go back to, where they take takoyaki. For those who don't know, it's a street food. It's the little balls of fried dough with octopus and veggies and stuff inside. And there's one where they hollow out one of them. They don't put octopus in it, and they stuff it with wasabi paste. And then they dip it back in batter. They dip them all in batter one more time and put them back in the pan so they all cook, so they all look about the same. And then they throw them on your plate, cover it in mayo, cover it in takoyaki sauce, cover it in seaweed and fish flake and everything else, and then it slides out to your table, and there's a little Typhon cardboard standy boy sitting there, just kind of chilling on the side of your plate. And you just are supposed to eat it, and it's totally fine. And it comes with a glass of ice water, and they just slide it over to you, and you're like, okay, cool, whatever. And then you just start eating your takoyaki, and it's rich and delicious and wonderful, and there's nothing weird that's going, oh god! And then you eat an entire tablespoon-sized ball of wasabi in one bite.
Hunger!
But you can breathe so well after that.
Oh yeah, no, I thought my buddy Strider was gonna die. He was having a really rough go. But yeah, his girlfriend, and Mary Matsuri from Crystal Data Center, we had an absolute blast. But he ordered it knowing full well that one of us was going to get it. So he slid it to the middle of the table, and I had one, and his girlfriend had one, and Mary had one, and he had one. And then Mary had another one, and then I had another one, and then his girlfriend had another one, and there was two left, and he was like, shit. Because he knew he now had a 50-50 chance of getting absolutely decimated.
Beautiful.
I slid half a beer over to him, and he just downed it. He was not okay. It was great.
Good time.
So that's the boss. Every time I hear the boss fight, I just imagine a little random dude just not having a good day in Akiba. It was a good time.
All right. And our final theme from the first disc of Final Fantasy VI. Oops. Comes at a very, very eye-opening moment, we'll call it. The theme The theme is called Metamorphosis.
You can pick up those elements of Terra's theme in there.
As you should.
Which
But
you
this
really
is when
haven't
Terra-
gotten yet, but...
No, but this is that moment where Terra loses the ability to control her powers when she realizes, oh shit, I am an Esper. She transforms into that white and purple being that not everybody has seen yet. She starts using magic, which some of your party members have seen, but not all of your party members have seen. And magic was this weird, banned, strange, mysterious force thing. So which is why the Emperor was trying to capture it all. And then suddenly, here's somebody that you trust, that you've been sleeping next to at campsites, that you've been working with for the last couple of weeks, and she explodes in more powerful magic than you've ever heard about or seen in your whole life.
This also plays during Kefka's raid on Thamasa and during the Cataclysm.
It kind of feels like it's a crisis with magic.
You're not wrong. So that is
You're muted. Taliz, you're muted.
Yeah, Taliz, you're muted.
Am I? Oh shit! Sorry. It's fine. My computer's like almost is doing a lot of dumb stuff, so I might vanish.
We're almost
Sorry
done,
about
so
that.
don't worry about that. That
Yeah.
is
Yay!
that is the last song of disc 1.
But yeah, you've got that crisis feeling to it, mixed in with Terra's theme as like this kind of representative of all like Esperdom and magic power and whatnot. So it's kind of this horrific magic run amok type thing, whether it's Terra's powers going out of control or the statues of the three deity, the warring triad, being pushed out of alignment and magic itself being let loose and disrupting the world.
Like I said, every time I'm playing these songs, I'm picturing my playthrough of Final Fantasy VI, and it's like, yep, that's what I felt then. I love these. I love doing these.
Yep.
I hope you guys are still enjoying them as well. It's such a fun
the chat
time.
seems pretty active. I think they're enjoying themselves.
Well, with people wanting to replay the games now, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is
You're welcome, y'all.
Wow, that was quite a robot.
Yeah, I told you I was going to disappear on you.
Now we're actually getting laggy. We see you talking, and then we get the audio. It's beautiful. Oh well. We'll go ahead and finish up here. Like I said, in 2 weeks we'll be doing disc 2, so tune in for that. But for now, we've got emails. If you guys joined us 2 weeks ago on our 5th anniversary stream, we told you guys we want you to email or tweet at us. You can email us podcast@phoenixstarradio.com or tweet us at phxdnradio, one of your favorite Final Fantasy memories. And we'll pick our favorites and we'll give away 3 different mounts to those who we choose.
Yeah. Just from this, like, we've just spent this talking about one disc of the Final Fantasy VI soundtrack, and we've already seen a lot of memories coming back. So you've got a lot to choose from here.
Exactly. So this one comes, I'm going to slaughter this, from Ikasretsum. Sorry about that. Somebody who joined us on the last episode, so that's awesome. Cast of Phoenix Star Radio. I'm fairly new to your podcast. I've been listening since around the start of your Final Fantasy Music Showcase. I also caught up on some of your back catalog. Congrats on 5 years, by the way. I don't really have a profound story of how Final Fantasy changed my life, but I do have a little anecdote from my childhood. The first game in the series I was introduced to was Final Fantasy VI, also known as Final Fantasy III at the time. We lived in a small rural town, and I would ride my bike a few kilometers to reach the nearest video rental store. I was able to save a little money to afford to rent a game on the occasional weekend. Then one day, I discovered a new SNES game at the store and took it home. The game was titled Final Fantasy III. For the next handful of weekends, I would rent the same cartridge and get just a little bit further. Then one day, the game had been rented by someone else. A few more weekends passed before I would get my hands on it again. When I loaded it up, there were some new save files for the first time since I started playing it. These weren't just any saves. They were endgame saves with levels and magic maxed out. Plus all secret characters unlocked. I was just amazed that anyone could be that good at a game I struggled so much on. Many years later, and now I'm the one championing Final Fantasy games, taking on super bosses and collecting achievements like it's child's play. And I think it may just be thanks to the unknown player back in the 90s that helped inspire me to be a better gamer. Thanks everyone, and keep up the good work.
Aw, that's really sweet. I remember like the video stores in my town too. I played Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy III, also just by like renting it for the stores and seeing those. Yeah, you would like see those saves and you start peeking into it. It's like, oh my gosh, where did they even get that sword from? Where are they?
Isn't that
Who
crazy?
is that character? Oh wow, there's so much
crap.
here.
Damn it, Taliz, we lost him, and now our video's all messed up.
He'll hopefully be back soon.
Nope, we good. Probably looks
man,
like that.
Some weird stuff to the video.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
There we go. Yeah, I told you it's weird when that stuff happens. So all right, we're back.
But yeah, no, that was a. That's one of the reasons that like some of the new digital stuff occasionally makes me a little sad. Just that experience of like renting something, getting a glimpse into how someone else plays. I guess you can still do that through YouTube videos, like Twitch streams and things like that. It is different now, though. You don't get some of those unexpected ones.
Yep.
But yeah, no, that's such an amazing feeling. Isn't it like getting the game for the first time, realizing, oh, hey, there's more to this than I thought.
Or when you buy a used copy of Pokemon and you go, oh, hang on, I need to trade all of this shit to something else because you just get somebody else's like full living Pokedex or something.
All right. And we also received an email from Kupo. Dear Phoenix Down Radio, Happy anniversary and congratulations to this amazing achievement. Hope there will be many more episodes of the podcast for me to listen to. Is your giveaway still going on? I want to share my favorite Final Fantasy memory. In Final Fantasy VII, the original, which I played on PlayStation, where you see the flashbacks to the reactor in Nibelheim, I loved how they managed to generate such a creepy atmosphere, considering the limitation of the graphics at the time. Wishing you all the best. And yes, that was an amazing, emotive scene that just like, whoa.
The Nibelheim reactor was incredibly good, and it was one of the moments, and it was early on enough that we could really establish, like, hey, 7 isn't your run-of-the-mill game. You're not going to be able to just acquire a new sword every 2 hours of gameplay and keep going. There's some stuff you're going to have to do, and it's not just combat. There's some things that you're going to have to overcome, either puzzle-wise, or find these people, or resolve this kind of stuff narratively before these characters can continue moving forward with killing the boss, whatever the hell that means in Disc 1.
Hunting down Sephiroth.
In Disc 1, kind of, but in Disc 2, it gets worse, and then Disc 3 is just the fight. Like, it evolves. That boss fight evolves over the course of your narrative understanding.
True.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this both today and on other ones. Just understanding, it's not just a matter of, oh, you just show the picture, that understanding what makes something creepy. How can you do that? You don't have to depict it perfectly. And in fact, having some stuff that's not necessarily as visual, some stuff where you're more making a hint or suggestion of, something where you let the viewer's brains fill in the details. Having a really good understanding of what you can do and how people view those stories. Like, this is stuff that's being done by people who really know their craft.
Good directors, good filmmakers, good game designers, good audio engineers can make or break something.
It is a goddamn art.
Yes.
I mean, you look at classic 90s films, like imagine Jurassic Park with a score done by anyone else. Same film, but different music. It doesn't work. John Williams does crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You have to have all of the pieces. And once you have all the pieces together, it's unstoppable.
Yeah, if John Williams wasn't in Star Wars, that
there wouldn't be 9 movies or anything.
Yeah, wouldn't be a huge Disney property now. Yeah, crazy shit. But yes, we are still taking entries, guys. There is time to continue if you want to enter for your chance to win either a SDS Fenrir, Fat Cat, or Red Hair Mount. Email us or tweet at us with your favorite Final Fantasy moments at PHXDN Radio or podcast at phoenixstarradio.com. We'll read it on the air and we will be picking winners. Probably.
Also, it's just nice to hear from you guys.
That too. If we have to keep giving you stuff to get you to write us, we'll do it. But
we will purchase your love. That's how this works, right?
That's what I'm
phrasing.
thinking.
Are we still doing phrasing? Because that feels like a phrasing right there.
I get what I said.
Okay.
Oh my. Anyway, I think.
Yeah, it's 8:35. We've gone after dark. Sorry.
And I think that will do it for this episode of Phoenix Down Radio, guys. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like, subscribe, or follow us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. We are now on Amazon Music, so if you have Amazon, you can search for our podcast there, or whatever your preferred podcatchers. Yes, actually, it's brand new. I believe it happened just this week.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Neat.
And if possible, leave us a rating or review. It helps people find our podcast and helps us grow in the community. If you really dig this show, you can consider subscribing here at twitch.tv/PhoenixDownRadio and get access to a number of special subscriber-only emotes and badges. Or you can go out to patreon.com/PhoenixDownRadio and support us like our benevolent overlord, Aurori Fenrir.
I will never not find that amusing.
All proceeds go towards... She is the best. They all go towards growing the show, covering hosting costs, allow me to get cameras for those two yahoos when they want to work. Well, it's more Taliz's laptop, not the camera.
Yeah.
We need more subscribers in order to get a laptop for Taliz. I'll say that much.
Oh, God. Oh, dear. If we someday have enough subscribers to buy me a laptop, I might have to like quit my job, like to do everything that we need to do.
But just let's just do things like that. But any kind of support, whether it's likes, retweets, emails, or subscribing, following, being a patron.
With words in the dead of night, we're listening. We're always listening.
I like that,
I don't even know
Mama
where that
Dragon.
came from. I'm sorry.
Mama Dragon in
Go
chat.
back?
Challenge accepted. Anyway, any kind of support, it's always greatly appreciated. We love you guys. We absolutely do. If you want to check out the backlog of our podcasts, because we're getting to have so many now that the podcatchers aren't listing everything, you can go out to our website, phoenixstarradio.com, and get the entire back catalog of all of our podcasts, starting with episode 0.
Are we gonna have to like pull out and have like a season 1 block of downloads on the website soon?
No, I think it'll be fine.
Okay.
Like I say, you can just go into up in the top navigation. You can click on episodes, and you may have to scroll down a ways, but it's there. But if you want to email us, like I said, it's podcast@phoenixstarradio.com, Twitter @phxdnradio, or YouTube. You can find us on youtube.com/phoenixdownradio. So who wants to start with some shout outs?
I'm going to shout out a couple of people in the chat. One is Pyrocats1, who's letting me chill on her couch and has been feeding me fried cheese for most of the show, which was rad as hell. We're doing Harumaki experiments. Spoiler alert, smoked Gouda. Good stuff. Shout outs to Mama Dragon 89, who has finally rejoined us playing Final Fantasy XIV. And she's going to be on Hyperion, so that's exciting.
Nice.
So that's cool. Shout outs to, let's see, who else do we have? Shout outs to Bannon for making a bunch of gear for Mama Dragon 89. She doesn't know it yet, but it's going to be in her mailbox soon. And yeah, let's see, who else did I harass Final Fantasy related? Oh, shout outs to my new coworker who has apparently been like a red mage main and started playing during Stormblood.
Oh, nice.
Dang.
It's good job, Zach. You came in a weird spot, dude, but good job.
Get him over on Primal.
I'm trying.
And where can they find you?
Please find me on Instagram at Marvelous Tofu. I post things about cars and food and a little bit of other stuff. You can also find me on Twitter at Taliz Marvelous. I post every once in a great while, but not usually. DMs are open. Send me weird stuff about food and cars.
Do it. You know you want to. Seyrr.
All right. So, shout outs to the kittens we've been fostering, Twix and Pretzel, for curling up against me and like actually going to sleep for a little bit last night. It was so great.
Aww.
And like when everything kind of sucks and is stressful, having a kitten sleep on you helps a lot. Shout out to Rockel Montaigne over on Excalibur, fellow loremonger who always manages to point out when I've stayed up until 3 a.m., carefully disregarding the fact that he has also stayed up until 3 a.m. warms my heart, bud. And shout out to the Crucible Discord, particularly this week, Safe as Sephiroth, Brohamet, and Feeny, really good friends who are always up for a chat or a fun game of Among Us. There was so much murder. It was great. I stabbed someone in the face and no one saw me, and then I hit an event. Good times.
I'm so glad I know you're playing a video game. That's all I'm going to say, man.
Woo!
Speaking of which, we need to get the Fall Guys things going again.
And yes, for the social medias, you can usually you can follow me on Twitter at FF14Seyrr. That's FFXIVSEYRR, 2 R's, where I will usually post random pictures of things I've been cooking. Not as much library stuff lately, what with the building being closed, and occasional screeds about whatever happens to have captured my interest. I also keep an eye on the Phoenix Down Radio Discord. Love your discussions. I'm going since we're going to be continuing to foster kittens, I'll start posting more pictures of them, because it turns out that the library will also let you check out DSLRs.
Nice. Now
you have to go through a special training thing, and with everything closed, the public can't. So that means that the librarians get longer checkout periods for the moment.
may need to
And
get.
I use it to take pictures of kittens. It's great.
Depending on the model, we may need to get you a capture card that you can use, and maybe you can do what I'm doing with mine.
I might be. I'll go over it with you afterwards.
Yeah.
They gave me a whole bunch of equipment with it.
Yeah, we'll discuss that after the show. And I, of course, want to shout out those two knuckleheads, Seyrr and Taliz, for making this a fun episode. We were going to discuss 5.3 spoiler cast, but there's a lot that needs to be written out on that, and a lot
went on there.
A lot of stuff went on, and a lot of other shows covered it very well. If you want to talk spoilers, we can maybe look at making a segment and talking about it, because it was a very good story. But we decided we wanted to get back into something a little bit more lighthearted and fun, so we jumped back into the music for this week. So we hope you guys appreciated that. Shout out to our anonymous donor who donated $100 to our Extra Life during the show tonight. Thank you so much for that. The kids will greatly appreciate that.
Don't know what that was about, but more power to you.
Shout out to our friend Scarlet. I think it might have come from that, because Scarlet was posting about the girls of Final Fantasy XII, and then another friend of the show, Kane Thorbreaker, decided to shitpost and say, hey, wasn't Klauss supposed to sing the theme song to that game? And then we got into the whole thing talking about, no, we haven't hit our goal yet. And then mentioned add Extra Life in there, and I don't know if maybe somebody saw it, and if that helped. I mean, hey, $100 donation for the kids, that's worth it right there.
Do you think we can get him to wear the songstress dress?
I don't know if I want that.
Well, see, it's $1,500 to get me to sing the song. Okay.
I don't know if I want it. I just want to know if we can do it.
$2,500.
Y'all?
But you also have to provide the cosplay.
Does it have to be a good cosplay?
It has to be one that fits me and is can be worn on stream.
So I'm gonna need measurements for your bust and inseam. This has nothing to do with that. I just think it'd be funny to know.
Jesus Christ. Mine's gonna be made of duct tape and cotton. Good luck, y'all.
Yeah, that's true. Yelta can't actually run up here and take the measurements for you, Seyrr.
Oh, damn. You're the best.
Teamwork, y'all. Teamwork is how we get through this problem.
Teamwork makes the dream work, isn't it what they say?
Problem that we didn't know we had until 35 seconds ago, but here we are.
What kind of dream is this exactly?
I'm pretty sure it's a nightmare. Anyway, thanks for watching, y'all.
Hey, I'm not done yet here. I'm still shouting out. Give me a break. You're the ones who started that.
Yeah. No argument here.
Shout out to everybody joining us live here at twitch.tv/PhoenixDownRadio and listening on the podcast. We really do appreciate each and every one of you listening. So thank you so much for that. And as we get into our 6th year of podcasting, that's crazy to say.
Time is weird.
Time doesn't exist.
So,
yeah, that too.
For my co-hosts, Seyrr Timono, for Taliz Marvelous, I'm Klauss Nightbringer, wishing everybody a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Grr.